name is Patrick Dalager. I'm the Chief of Police in Mission, Texas, and I'm a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel. My specialty in the military was anti-terrorist operations, counter-terrorist operations. Since retiring from the military, I've been active in law enforcement as the Chief of Police, the Director of 2 different police academies, and I currently run one of the most modern and progressive police departments in the state of Texas. Been involved actively in a broad range of training activities for many years, particularly training activities involving violence management, crisis management, corporate security, bank security, that type of thing, which is a natural ongoing part of today's law enforcement activity. As an adjunct to that, I've been involved in several different training programs for the Department of State, Office of Counterterrorism, and at the request of governments, for example, the Republic of Mexico, to conduct training programs and training sessions, primarily on things like anti-terrorist, counter-terrorist operations, dignitary protection, that type of thing. In addition, I've developed several training programs for the new U.S. Department of Justice Foreign Officers Training Programs. Most recently, I developed the Instructor training program that's being used throughout South and Central America by the Department of Justice Foreign Officer Training Program. Before that, I developed a training program on basic firearms instruction. Again, it was to be used by the Department of Justice Foreign Officer Training Program for the purpose of conducting standardized firearms training for South and Central American governments. We're currently in the process of developing training programs for the Republic of Mexico as a result of the many kidnappings and assassinations that have taken place over the last 2 years, in particular the last 10 months within the Republic of Mexico. Fundamentally, we are very practical in our training approach. In the areas of dignitary protection, for example, our program is about 20% to 25% classroom. The remainder of our training programs are practical in nature. We use some rather advanced, sophisticated weapons training programs. We use a variety of weapons training, such as handgun, assault rifles, submachine guns, that type of thing. We also do a number of training exercises in working with executives in live ammunition, live firing. And throughout this, we do program training on evasive driving, protective services type driving, driver training, and in particular the training of people who might be chauffeurs for government leaders or corporate executives that want a highly professionally trained individual to protect them in terms of driver training. So we're also involved in that area of executive dignitary protection. It's kind of interesting to note that a lot of the technology that was developed several years ago, in particular dealing with deceptive tactics and executive dignitary protection, are coming back into vogue again, and we're going back to some of the tactics that we used 10 years ago. But these older tactics are now being supplemented by modern technology, particularly electronics equipment of various types, monitoring equipment, very sophisticated video equipment, telephone monitoring, that type of thing. So there's a lot of things going on now in the executive dignitary protection area, which some of which I really don't believe this would be the appropriate media to discuss it. But suffice it to say that we have the capability to conduct some very performance-oriented, skill-oriented training as it deals with violence management, executive dignitary protection, and terrorist or counter-terrorist operations. If enforcement organization needs that type of training, we have that capability. We also incorporate within our training programs city, county, state, and federal law enforcement officers. They also benefit from these type of training programs because it teaches them a number of skills, particularly in the area of crisis management and violence management, that are very helpful. Secondarily, the advanced firearms training, I believe, is very helpful because it also introduces them to types of weapons that are not normally used or carried by law enforcement officers. And the driver training or evasive driving that's taught in executive dignitary protection is very useful to law enforcement officers, particularly in the area of accident avoidance, pursuit driving, that type of thing. Even though there is not a direct correlation between evasive driving and pursuit driving, the technology in terms of controlling the vehicle, smoothness of operating the vehicle, evading or avoiding, I should say, accidents is extremely important to law enforcement. So many of the officers who attend our training programs, that have attended our training programs, do so to improve their skill levels as law enforcement officers, even though they may not be directly involved in executive dignitary protection or violence management as it relates to today's corporate executive.
The Mission Police Department Training Center is flexible in its design for classroom lecture, physical fitness exercises, and simulated indoor scenarios. The Advanced Driving Development Center can be quickly altered to simulate most driving scenarios, including high-speed pursuit, skill development, evasive maneuvers, accident avoidance, and total vehicle control exercises, as well as outdoor kidnapping and terrorist simulations. The Mission Police Department Firearms Range is designed for day and night firing simulations using varied levels of weapons.
Gun rear!
At your time, whenever you're ready. Send money to Free Willie.
Gun left rear! Get him off, goddammit! Right! Walk. Shoot!
Rules of the game. The material that you have in these handouts cannot be distributed outside of the law enforcement community or the government. You all understand that? You do not have my permission, nor do you have the permission of the U.S. Secret Service, of which their material is here, to distribute this outside of a law enforcement agency or a government agency. You all understand that? We are going to train for the worst possible scenario. Tomorrow you will be introduced to OC, CS, tear gas. You're also going to have some extensive training on handgun disarming and knife disarming. The deadliest weapon in the world at close range is a knife. If I were going to kill someone in the crowd, I could kill them. Rather than a gun. A gun draws a lot of attention. So we will work on things like anti-assassination. We will work on things like anti-kidnapping. We will work on things like motorcade. We will work on things like live fire exercises as groups. 2 of you will have shotguns. 2 of you will have submachine guns. And you will be evacuating someone on the range and using live ammunition. Then we'll have different exercises. Gun right, gun left, gun front, gun rear. And and you're going to have to knock down the principal, take out the suspect, evacuate him from the ring, and there'll be live firing. All exercises will be keyed with a gunshot. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do, besides doing a vulnerability study of the home, travel, office, everything that they do, and we'll show you how to do one of those. We'll actually do a vulnerability study on Friday. The next thing is we brief the protectee and their family. That's the toughest part of this thing. The highest ransom ever paid in the history of the world was paid in Mexico last year, $40 million for one man. One bodyguard cannot protect one individual against any serious attack. Not possible. Now, one of the things you teach the protectee, the person you're protecting, we'll say the governor of Tamaulipas or the president of Mexico, for example, is you teach him how to shake hands. Now, we're shaking hands. Now, squeeze my hand. Hard, hard. Squeeze it hard. Leaning rest. That's the push-up position. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Stand up. Run! Move!
All right.
Go! Look at your feet. Recover. Walk. Go! Recover. Move back. Run! Run! You're too damn slow. Recover. What are you supposed to say? I'm not trying to harass you. Don't misunderstand me. I don't want to harass you, believe me. I know how to harass you. I'm a professional at it. I used to be a drill sergeant. Draw! Very good. Recover. Thank you.
If it's a knife, if he says knife right, then I would suggest that this guy just come over here and pull this guy on out of the way and take over. You're gonna walk up behind him and just take him down. You can kick here, you can kick either knee you want. Just so you get that, don't let him fall. Get him down, move around between him and the grip. If he spins around and comes down, when I step over, I'm gonna try to push that finger in there more. Then I'm gonna pull that so the finger goes in there deeper. See that finger go in there deeper? That not only breaks the wrist down, but it helps me to pull that finger in there. Once I got the finger in there, I'm gonna kick, pull, and snatch.
I introduced Mr. Rex Sagle. And I did.
The course out there is different than pursuit driving, as I told you before. It's not a Sunday school class. You're going to have to pay strict attention. You're going to have to read the course. It's set up with temporary highway markers that they use in construction zones. They're about this high, about that long, and they have reflectors on them so you can see them at night. And that portion of the track we use most of the time. This track is 1 mile long. Some of it is by cones. They're just about as hard to read. I'm going to give you time. We're going to go around many times slow so you know exactly where the track is headed. It has a few turns in it that are meant to simulate different situations. This is an executive dignitary protection class, not pursuit driving. The film you're about to see addresses most of the techniques.
What we have here now is Rex putting on a demonstration for the fellas. This Rex demonstrating the slalom here for the fellas, what he wants done. Nobody's spun out yet or knocked any cones down. Going through there with good speed too. There's the sectors to go through, either right or left there.
Oh, the opposite?
Opposite. The left, closed.
Si prendes la izquierda te vas a la derecha. Si prendes la derecha te vas a la derecha.
Got it. Awesome. Awesome. Spectacular.
Here, you see the instructor demonstrating to a student that although the student's vehicle is a faster one, by using the correct line of travel and proper steering and braking techniques, the instructor's slower vehicle is able to meet the demands made by the faster car.
This is a trick I learned with the Secret Service. You keep your spare magazine on the same side where your gun is, because what does the magazine do in my pocket? See what happens to my jacket? Makes it easier to draw my weapon, and it pulls it out of the way. If you think that you are being surveilled by somebody or counter-surveilled by someone and you want to deceive them, what might be a good thing to do? Get on the mobile phone and set up a decoy conversation. You can even go to the point where you tape it and you simply have somebody push a button and send out a false message, make them think you are where you are. The exception was the shooting of George Wallace. I have the videotape of his shooting. They're all waving and smiling, and the guy that shot him had the biggest smile on his face. You can't believe it. He was smiling, and then went boom, boom, boom. Pumped 3 bullets into him and kept smiling. He had been to several presidential candidate receptions and functions. And he figured out that the Secret Service always did what? They looked at people's faces. So if you're protecting somebody and you go into a room full of people, you look at their faces and you look at their hands. It's extremely difficult to be jovial about something or happy to see somebody, okay, and kill them. Otherwise, the psychological makeup that it takes to make that transfer is very complicated. Psychologically, it can be done. It has been done. The man that tried to kill President Reagan did, in fact, change his expression. However, they caught the expression change, but they were too slow to move on it. He was like this, and all of a sudden, he honed in on the target. He never lost contact with Reagan. As he was moving through the crowd, this guy's eyes were right on him. But at first he was, and then he was, and they saw it, but they didn't move in on him. They didn't home in on him. And by the time they did, it was too late. The shots had already happened. So, you have to learn to read people. Let me tell you something. The King's limousine is a what kind of car? What kind of car do you think the King's limousine is? No. The Rolls Royce. About a $2.5 million Rolls Royce. Okay? You couldn't miss it if your life depended on it. And I said, well, first of all, you take the Rolls Royce in the middle of all those Chevrolets, and that's where the King is, right? Oh, okay. Well, what should we do? And I said, have all Chevrolets. And then they won't know which Chevrolet is in. They took me literally. They called the General Motors plant in Detroit and ordered 48 Chevrolet sedans and had them shipped from the United States to Saudi Arabia. And they had 48 sedans, all the same color. And then he had all of his wives and all of his relatives and shit in all 48 of those cars. And that's how they went to Mecca. They're going to select a target that has regular schedule, routine patterns of activity. If it's an individual, they're going to try to go for somebody in a chauffeur-driven vehicle. And they're going to target, the target will probably be hit while they're traveling early in the morning, okay? Over 90% of all of the assassinations worldwide by people trained by communist countries, the Patrice Lumumba Institute in the Soviet Union and all those places hit like that.